Picture this, it's 2040 and you're touring a continent that's become a beautiful, quiet relic. The streets are pristine but empty. The cafes are full, but with gray hair. You're not walking through a superpower anymore, but the world's most expensive museum. Back in 2008, the EU and US economies were twins. Today, America has rocketed to over $27 trillion, while Europe stagnates at $17 trillion. How did a continent with such history and high living standards fall so far, so fast? It wasn't an accident. It was a suicide. We're going to dissect the 6 fatal wounds bleeding Europe dry. First, the great de-industrialization. Germany's economic engine is stalling. For decades, Germany thrived on a simple formula: use American security, Chinese demand, and cheap Russian gas. When the pipelines were cut, that model evaporated overnight. Companies like BASF, the world's largest chemical producer, are now shutting German production lines. Why? Energy prices make business mathematically impossible. Instead, they're investing billions in China. The irony is profound. Germany, champion of green policies, is forcing companies to move to a country that burns massive amounts of coal. To compound this, Germany shut its last nuclear plants during an energy crisis, only to reactivate dirty coal plants. Europe built its wealth on making things, and those factory doors are now closing. Second, the demographic death spiral. If closed factories are a heart attack, this is a slow cancer. Let's go to Italy. The birth rate has hit a historic low of 1.18 children per woman. A population needs 2.1 just to replace itself. At 1.18, you're looking at mathematical extinction. Imagine you're Matteo, a 25-year-old Italian. You can't find a good job, you live with your parents, and the state expects you to pay for the massive generation of retirees above you. Europe's pension systems are pay-as-you-go. The money for grandma's pension comes directly from Matteo's paycheck. In the 1960s, there were 4 workers for every retiree. By 2050, there will be fewer than 2. The math doesn't work. Taxes must rise crushingly high, so what does Matteo do? He leaves for the US or Australia. This creates a death spiral. Young people leave, the tax base shrinks, taxes rise on those who remain, prompting more to leave. The political reality makes it worse. Old people vote. Any politician who suggests cutting pensions loses. So they do nothing, borrowing money until the road ends. Third, the innovation vacuum. Name a European smartphone, a European search engine, a social media network. The modern economy is digital, and Europe is a digital colony of the US. The combined value of America's top 7 tech companies is larger than the entire stock markets of the UK, France, and Germany. This isn't because Europeans aren't smart. The web was invented at CERN. The problem is that Europe has become the world's regulatory superpower. There's an old joke: the US innovates, China replicates, Europe regulates. While Silicon Valley poured billions into AI, the EU was writing the AI Act to police AI before they even had a successful AI company to police. European startups face death by 1,000 regulatory cuts across 27 different countries. When they do succeed, they get bought by Americans. Europe is becoming a talent nursery harvested by US corporations. Fourth, capital flight. Money has no patriotism. It only cares about returns, and right now, money is fleeing Europe. Americans invest in stocks. Europeans keep money in savings accounts earning low interest. This means European companies lack a deep pool of capital. When the UK's ARM Holdings, which designs the architecture for most smartphone chips, decided to go public, it didn't choose London. It listed on the Nasdaq in New York. Spotify, BioNTech, Birkenstock All European, all trade in the US. This creates a vicious cycle. European investors see better returns in America, so they send their money there. European companies see more capital in America, so they move there. The US economy grows faster, attracting even more capital. The irony is palpable. Europe is funding its own decline. Fifth, the energy suicide. Europe led the green transition, but its strategy was economically catastrophic. The plan was shut down nuclear, ban fracking, build renewables, and rely on cheap Russian gas as backup. The fatal flaw was relying on Vladimir Putin. When he invaded Ukraine, energy prices in Europe spiked to 10 times US levels. European industry pays 3 to 4 times more for electricity than its US and Chinese competitors. You cannot compete with that. Meanwhile, people face energy poverty, choosing between heating and eating. Europe bet the farm on a world that no longer exists, and now it's deindustrializing to save the planet while China builds 2 new coal plants every week. Sixth, the geopolitical freeloader. For 75 years, Europe lived in a garden protected by an American wall. The US provided security, Europe focused on social welfare. It was a great deal. They didn't have to spend on defense, so they spent on healthcare, vacation, and pensions. For decades, most NATO members failed to meet the 2% GDP defense spending target. Now, war has returned to the continent. The British Army would run out of ammo in 2 days. Money spent on tanks is money not spent on hospitals. Europe must now pay for both its expensive welfare state and its security, but with a stagnant economy and a shrinking workforce, the math doesn't look good. A recent EU report called for $800 billion per year in investment to catch up a Marshall Plan every single year. But to get that money, Europe must unify. Germany doesn't want to pay for Italy's debt. France protects its farmers, the political will isn't there. We are left with 2 futures. A renaissance where Europe wakes up, cuts red tape, and saves itself. Or the museum, a path of comfortable decline where Europe becomes a beautiful retirement home. The trains will just run slower, the taxes will get higher, until one day you look around and the party is over. There's a lesson here for everyone. Success is not permanent. Europe spent 500 years building the modern world, and in just 30 years of complacency, they threw it away. If it can happen to them, it can happen to anyone. To understand how America pulled ahead, watch our next video. Subscribe to Money Timeline. I'll see you in the next one.